So for this video, guys, we're still going to be focusing on Here Boy, but we're going to be focusing on these objectives, on referring to specific details in a text when drawing inferences, and describing a character's thoughts and feelings based on specific details from the text. So let's head back to our Here Boy text right here. And this is going to be our graphic organizer that we're going to be working on for this one. It's our evidence and inference chart. So remember, in our previous lesson, we looked at how Opal's narration helps the reader understand her point of view because of her thoughts and her feelings. It was that interpretation that we just did. So her narration, though, does not give other characters a chance to explain how they feel. What we're going to be working on is getting those context clues to figure out the other character's feelings, like the manager's feelings and the dog's feelings. All we have right now is her interpretation of it. So we're going to be filling out that evidence and inference chart right over here. And while we do that, I want you to think back to our previous lesson and think about the conclusions that we drew about the narrator's observations. So think about the video we just watched about what we filled out. In this lesson, we're going to draw inferences about the feelings of other characters based on these selections. An inference, remember, is something that's not stated directly in the text, but it's a reasonable assumption based on the evidence. So we're making an educated guess based on what the author has put in front of us to read. Since in a first-person text, we don't get access to the other character's thoughts or feelings, we have to make these inferences. The only character whose true thoughts and feelings we know are Opal. The rest, we're making inferences. So we're going to look on Here Boy, and we're going to look on paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. So that first section. So let's zoom on in. And now we're ready to begin. At first, I didn't see a dog. There's just a lot of vegetables rolling around on the floor. Tomatoes and onions and green peppers. And there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. Now, paragraph 1 mentions a dog and then includes descriptions of a huge mess in the store and employees running and waving their arms. If I put these details together, I can infer that the dog has caused the mess and upset the employees. So what was my evidence to know that those employees are upset? Because nowhere in here does it say the employees are upset or Fred, the store manager, is upset with this dog. So that's our inference that we're making. And our evidence that goes along with it can be pulled out from these sentences that we just read. We can pull out there's a lot of vegetables on the floor because that's obviously not the way that a store should have their vegetables displayed. We can also pull out that, let me just make this a little bit bigger. We can also pull out that there was the whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around waving their arms. And also that store manager was waving his. All of that came from paragraph 1. Now, what was my inference? What do I now know based on this? Well, I know that the dog has upended. He's caused a commotion with the vegetable display, and he's causing chaos in the store. So that is my inference right there. Let me make our text box. So that is my inference. It doesn't actually say in that first paragraph that the dog has destroyed the vegetable stand and is causing chaos in the store. Look at it as I read it again. It says, at first I didn't see a dog. There were just a lot of vegetables rolling around on the floor, tomatoes and onions and green peppers. And there's what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running and waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. So, nowhere in there does it say the dog caused it. In fact, all it says right here is, I didn't see a dog. But we made that inference because she's saying at first she didn't see it, and she's noticing this giant mess. So now, let's head on to paragraph 2. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog and ugly, and he looked like he was having a really good time. His tongue was hanging out and he was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I had never before in my life seen a dog smile, but that is what he did. He pulled back his lips and showed me all his teeth. Then he wagged his tail so hard that he knocked some oranges off a display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing with the tomatoes and onions and green peppers. So now, in this second paragraph, it says the dog bares his teeth, which might seem unfriendly, maybe even dangerous to most people, though it wasn't to Opal. So that's my inference, or that's my evidence I'm going to use for my inference. My inference is the dog might be dangerous because he's baring his teeth. He's showing his teeth. Now, if I walked up to you and said, there's a dog baring his teeth, you're probably going to think, I want to stay away from that dog. So that might be what the manager was thinking about as well. The dog might be dangerous because he's showing off those teeth of his. Now, what evidence do I have? Because someone might come up and say, well, the dog's not dangerous, he's just playing around. And I would say, well, in paragraph 2, it said this. It said he pulled back his lips and showed me all of his teeth. So that's my evidence to show why maybe the manager and the store employees might have thought this dog was dangerous. Now, let's head to paragraph 3. The manager screamed, somebody grab that dog. So now, this actually doesn't tell me the manager is upset, but I'm making that inference. Because he's screaming, he's yelling, I can probably guess that, yeah, he really is upset. So that's going to be my, where did you go? That's going to be my evidence to show that the manager is upset. Because he's screaming. Now you might say, well, of course, Mr. Wimbley, he's upset. There's a dog running around the store. But we have to show how we know he's upset because we only have Opal's thoughts and her observations. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the rest of the paragraphs 4 to 8, and we're going to keep completing this evidence and inference chart. And they're going to look at it once it's all done. The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. But somehow he ended up knocking the manager over. And the manager must have been having a bad day, because lying there on the floor, right in front of everyone, he started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concerned, and licked his face. Now, what I know here is that the manager's probably so upset he doesn't care what people think. But I also can figure out that, hey, this dog's actually friendly and not a vicious monster. And what evidence do I have to support those two ideas? Well, I have this one for the first part. Right in front of everyone, he started to cry. It's less telling me that he's so upset, he doesn't care what people are thinking. Because honestly, as a grown man, he probably wouldn't be crying if he wasn't really upset or really sad. And that second part, we know that the dog is friendly because he wants to lick his face. He's not trying to maul him to death or eat him. He just wants to play with him. So those are my two observations, my two inferences that I made based on the evidence, based on what Opal has shared with us. That the dog's friendly, not dangerous, and the manager is so upset that he doesn't care what people think. Now let's look at paragraph 5, 6, 7, and 8. Please, said the manager, somebody call the pound. Wait a minute, I hollered. That's my dog. Don't call the pound. All the Winn-Dixie employees turned around and looked at me, and I knew I had done something big, and maybe stupid too. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't let that dog go to the pound. Here, boy, I said. So, what do we notice from this? Well, we notice that the manager says, somebody call the pound. And why does he do that? What's our guess for that? Well, our guess is, and I did a poor job of time management and space management, so we're going to have to squeeze some in. He's saying that because he wants this dog taken away. He's desperate for this dog to leave. He doesn't just say, take this dog away, but he's calling for the pound. And we have to make that inference that the pound's going to take the dog away for us. Now, what else do I have? Well, I also have this sentence. Winn-Dixie's employee turned around and looked at me. And it doesn't really tell us why they're looking at her, but we have to make that inference. What has this dog been doing this entire time? This dog has been causing chaos. And oops, I forgot to put that paragraph 7. And so, why are these employees looking at her? Well, they're looking at her, I think, I'm making this inference, because they're shocked at how badly behaved this dog is. Or the employees are shocked that such a badly behaved dog has an owner. They probably thought this dog was just a mutt, just a dog roaming around in the neighborhood who somehow decided to break into their store. And when they see, oh, there's an owner, they're like, whoa, I was not expecting that. Now, what have we noticed? We've noticed all of these pieces of evidence, and we've put them together to make these inferences. Nowhere in our text does it say any of these things. The manager's upset. They think the dog is dangerous. The dog is friendly. Nowhere in there does it say that at all. All right, I'll see you guys in our next one.